Hey, welcome to our channel. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss our latest content.
I got home, almost at 1 in the morning. The flight I took last minute had been delayed, of course. A mechanical issue, they'd said. The layover in Denver only added to the bone-deep weariness that had settled into my soul over the past week. I hadn't told anyone I was coming back on Friday. 2 full days earlier than planned. I wanted to surprise Ilara. That was the story I told myself, anyway. The seminar had wrapped up sooner than expected, a blessing I hadn't anticipated, but deep down, deeper than I wanted to admit, I just needed to see her, to feel the warmth of our home. We had grown distant lately, not in a loud, argumentative way. No, it was far more insidious than that. It was a quiet cooling, a slow drift, like 2 ships that had forgotten they were sailing the same sea. I thought this gesture, this grand, spontaneous return, might help bridge that silent, creeping gap between us. So even though my eyelids felt like they were lined with sand, and every muscle in my body ached for sleep, I drove straight from the airport. A faint, tired smile played on my lips. I could already picture her face. That initial moment of confusion, melting into a surprised, radiant smile when she opened the door. The thought was the only thing keeping my exhaustion at bay. But as I pulled onto our street, the smile faltered. Something was wrong. The house was dark. Completely dark, not a single light on. Not the porch light we always left burning. Not the soft glow from the living room lamp she liked to read by. Total, unnerving silence. She's sleeping, I told myself. It's late. Of course, she's sleeping. But as soon as I killed the engine and stepped out of the car, the rationalizations evaporated. A cold dread, heavy and immediate, settled in my gut. The garage door was open, and Ilara's car wasn't there. My chest tightened. It was a physical sensation, a vice grip around my lungs. My mind raced, scrambling for an explanation. Any explanation. A late-night pharmacy run? No, she would have texted. Visiting a friend? Sarah? Maybe? At this hour? Unlikely. She would have told me. I walked toward the front door, my footsteps echoing unnaturally on the quiet suburban street. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers suddenly clumsy. The lock turned with a soft click that sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. I stepped inside. The silence in the house was different. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of a sleeping home. It was empty. Hollow. I stood there in the dim light of the hallway, letting my eyes adjust. Every breath I took seemed to amplify the void. That's when I took my phone out of my pocket, my thumb hovering over her name. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I called. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was thick, dragging, as if pulled from the depths of a heavy slumber. Hello? A wave of relief, so potent it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. I was wrong. I was just tired, paranoid. Hi, love, I said, my own voice softer than I intended. Did I wake you? There was a pause. On the other end of the line, I heard a deep breath being taken. A breath that was trying, just a little too hard, to sound natural. I was sleeping. Yes, she murmured. I'm already closing my eyes here. I stayed silent for 2 seconds. Just 2, controlling my own breathing, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you at home? Her answer came without a fraction of a second of hesitation. So quick, so smooth. Of course I am, Elliot. Where else would I be at this hour? I didn't respond immediately. My feet began to move on their own, a silent, grim pilgrimage down the hall, toward our bedroom. I pushed the door open. I observed the dark, empty room. The perfectly made bed, the undisturbed pillows, the profound, undeniable truth that she was not there. Nowhere. All right, I replied calmly, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. I just called to hear your voice. I'm going to sleep now. I'll be back on Sunday, like we planned. Oh, okay then, she said, a hint of relief in her sleepy tone. I love you. Sleep well. Good night, Ilara. I hung up before she could say anything else, before the lie of her, I love you too, could follow, and I just stood there, motionless in the center of our empty bedroom, still holding the phone to my ear. Every single word she had just spoken throbbed in my head. A separate, pulsating pain. She was lying, and she had no idea at all, that I was standing right here, in our room. While she claimed to be wrapped in our blankets, lost in sleep, the realization didn't creep in. It hit me. It hit me with the force of a physical blow, a force that knocked the very ground out from under my feet. It wasn't doubt anymore. It wasn't intuition. It was a lie. Cold, direct, effortless. I took a deep breath, the air in the empty room feeling thin, useless. I put my phone away and sat on the edge of the stairs, the hardwood pressing into my thighs. My travel bag slumped to the floor beside me, a forgotten relic from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I ran a hand over my face, the stubble scratching against my palm. I tried to remember, when was the last time Alara had been transparent with me, truly open? And suddenly, it all made sense. The distance, the work dinners that had become more and more frequent, the sudden mood changes, snapping from cheerful to irritable for no reason I could discern, the strange, muffled laughs on the phone that always stopped the second I walked into the room. Nothing was by chance. It was a pattern, a tapestry of deceit I had been too blind, or too trusting, to see. The house felt like an empty theater after the final curtain call. I looked around, at the photos on the wall, the throw blanket she loved folded neatly on the armchair, the half-read book on the end table. Everything carried the weight of something that once was. A place where I had built a story, a life, but which now seemed like the set for a performance I wasn't a part of. And the worst part, the part that twisted in my gut like a serrated knife, was that she had lied without hesitation, with a calm, sleepy voice. As if she really were lying right there, in our bed. But she wasn't, and I knew it. I stood up, my joints protesting, and walked through the silent living room. My gaze drifted aimlessly, and then, it stopped. On the coffee table, something was there that didn't belong. A wristwatch. It was large, gold, with a deep blue dial and a thick, black leather strap, an extravagant model, too noticeable to go unnoticed. It was placed near a stack of magazines, almost but not quite hidden. I moved toward it slowly, as if approaching a dangerous animal. I bent down and picked up the object with both hands, my fingers trembling slightly. The leather was still faintly warm, the weight of it was substantial, real. A solid piece of evidence in a world that had just dissolved into smoke and mirrors. I didn't have to guess. I recognized it immediately. It was the same watch I had seen on Donovan Coleman's wrist, Alara's boss. I'd seen it during a company dinner the previous year. He had gestured with his hand while telling some story, and the light had caught the gold case. No one else wore something so flashy, so arrogant, and in that instant, everything inside of me clicked into place. Not with a whisper, but with a sharp, violent blow. Donovan had been here, in my house, and for some reason, in his haste or his carelessness, he had left his watch behind. It wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't a paranoid fantasy born from exhaustion and a late-night phone call. It was proof. The betrayal now had a face, a name, and a forgotten object that screamed everything Alara had tried to hide with her sleepy, lying voice just minutes before. I walked back to our bedroom and lay down on the bed without taking off my shoes. I stared at the ceiling. My heart, which had been racing, now felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. It didn't hurt. Not yet. The shock was a strange, numbing anesthetic, but I could feel something inside me changing, shifting, hardening. I had always been a fair man, a calm man, someone who preferred dialogue, understanding. But this time would be different. This wouldn't be solved with words. If she had the courage to lie like that, so effortlessly, then I would have the courage to show the truth, in all its ugly, undeniable glory. And no one, especially not her, would ever see it coming. Just as she never imagined I was only a few feet away, hearing every single lie with my eyes wide open in the dark. I woke up early that Saturday. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in a state of grim awareness. The plan, however, was already clear in my mind. It had assembled itself in the dark, piece by meticulous piece. The forgotten watch was still on the coffee table, a silent witness to the betrayal, a golden monument to their carelessness. I stared at the object for a few seconds, then picked it up, placed it in a small box from my desk, and stored it at the bottom of a locked drawer. It had served its purpose for me. Its next appearance would be for a different audience. Words would be unnecessary. What was about to happen would speak for itself. I sat at the kitchen table for a few minutes, gathering my thoughts, letting the cold resolve settle over me. Then I started making calls. My voice, when I spoke, was the voice of the man everyone knew, the calm, steady, loving husband, the voice of someone who would never, ever raise suspicions. I called Ilara first. She answered, her tone now bright and casual. Saturday morning casual. Hey, you, she chirped. Hey, love, I replied, the term of endearment feeling foreign on my tongue. Listen, something a bit annoying happened. I made an online purchase a while back, and of course, it's scheduled to be delivered today. I completely forgot. It's one of those that needs a signature. Oh, really? Today? Yeah, I know. Terrible timing, I said, injecting a sigh of frustration. Would you be there to receive it? There was a slight pause. Oh, shoot. I was going to leave early. It's Saturday. I planned to spend the day with my sisters. Shopping, lunch, the whole thing. Perfect. Exactly as a normal Saturday should be. I pretended to hesitate. Damn. Well, I think the delivery window is pretty big. Could you maybe be home around 8 tonight? Just to be safe? I'd really appreciate it. Ilara, it's important. 8 o'clock? She repeated, thinking. Yeah, I can do that. I'll figure it out. I'll be back by then. You're the best. Thank you, I said. Of course. Talk to you later. Bye. As soon as the call ended, a slight, humorless smile touched my lips. I stood up. I now had the exact time frame. The house would be empty. The stage was mine to set. I put the plan I had been devising since the early hours of the morning into action. The first call was to Ilara's parents. Her mother answered, her voice warm and kind. Elliot, how are you, dear? Is everything all right with your trip? Everything is great, Carol. Thank you for asking, I said, my tone full of warmth. Actually, I'm calling for a wonderful reason. I've prepared a surprise tribute for Ilara here at the house tonight. Something intimate, but very special. Now, a tribute? For what? It's a celebration, I explained smoothly, for her dedication to volunteering. I was thinking about that social project she participated in a few years ago. I vaguely recalled a time she helped organize a clothing drive during a harsh winter. It was a one-time thing, but it sounded noble enough. And I just felt like she deserved some recognition from the people who love her most. Her mother was audibly touched. I could hear the emotion in her voice. Oh, Elliot, that is the sweetest thing I have ever heard. Her father, a more reserved man, got on the line. He thanked me for the invitation and said they wouldn't miss it for the world. I kept my voice steady, measured, as if nothing was out of place. And the more acceptance I got from the guests, the stronger my conviction grew. My grief was crystallizing into purpose. Next, I called Ilara's two sisters, Sarah and Michelle. I repeated the same story, carefully choosing words that would paint a picture they already believed in. The helpful daughter, the sister involved in good causes. Their reactions were exactly what I expected. Oh my God, Elliot, that's amazing, Sarah exclaimed. She's going to be so surprised. We'll buy her something nice for the occasion, Michelle added, already excited. Then came her friends, Amanda, Lisa, Rachel. I knew exactly who to invite. All those whom Ilara cherished. The ones she confided in, the ones she felt most comfortable with. I did everything with cold, surgical precision. One by one, the invitations were accepted. No one suspected a thing. Why would they? They were all coming to celebrate a generous, dedicated woman, admired for her kindness. They were coming to witness an act of love. I listened to each confirmation with a cutting calmness. As the list took shape, I thought about the other key piece of the plan. The main target wasn't just Ilara. Donovan also needed to be involved. And with him, his wife, Celia Coleman. She was the most sensitive, most crucial part of the strategy. If Celia showed up, everything would take on another dimension entirely. And for that, I needed to use the right story. I found her number and dialed. I took a deep breath, composing my voice into a tone of respectful enthusiasm. Celia, hi, it's Elliot Vance, Ilara's husband. Elliot, hello, how are you? Her voice was polite, sophisticated. I'm wonderful, thank you. And I'm calling because I have some wonderful news. I've organized a surprise for Ilara here at home tonight, a little tribute for her volunteer work. How lovely of you, she said. But, I continued, letting my voice drop conspiratorially, there's going to be a second part, and this involves you and Donovan. There was a pause. Donovan? But, he traveled yesterday for business. He's only coming back on Monday. I knew he had lied to her. The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. Yes, I know, I said, feigning excitement. But I managed to convince him to come back early. He loved the idea. I bought the ticket, arranged everything with him secretly. Don't tell anyone, it's going to be a double surprise. We're going to celebrate Alara, and then we're going to celebrate the amazing work you two do for the community. A night to honor you both. Celia laughed on the other end of the line. It was a light, proud laugh, the laugh of a woman who adored her husband. My God, how sweet. He never told me anything. Exactly, that's the idea, I said. A night to celebrate you both, and especially Alara. It all starts at 8. Of course, I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for anything in the world. I thanked her, and hung up. I left the phone on the table and stood still for a few seconds, the silence of the house pressing in on me. That conversation had sealed the plan. Celia would be Alara's mirror that night, and when the reflection appeared, the true image would reveal itself to everyone. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to show them, let everyone see with their own eyes who Alara, and who Donovan, really were behind their professional smiles and polite words. The day passed with excruciating slowness. Each minute felt longer than the last. I moved through the house like a ghost, taking care of every detail without losing focus. I bought pre-made snacks from the grocery store, ordered a few simple desserts from a local bakery, and purchased a variety of drinks. I didn't want anything elaborate. The illusion was that of a simple, heartfelt get-together. In the backyard, I discreetly organized everything. A large table, enough chairs for everyone, and soft string lights hanging from the pergola. It looked pleasant, wholesome, a perfect setting for a celebration. The riskiest part of the plan still depended on one variable. Alara could not know I was home. She had to believe I was still hundreds of miles away, exhausted in a hotel room. Based on her casual tone that morning, I knew she believed it. That lie gave me the time and space she thought she needed to repeat her mistake. I was almost certain she would return that night with Donovan. Maybe not to stay, maybe just for a moment, but they would be together. She thought the house was empty, a safe harbor for her secrets, and that was all I needed. As the afternoon light began to fade, I picked up my phone again. It was time for the final instructions. I started sending messages to the guest list. Hi everyone, quick update for tonight's surprise. To make sure Alara has no idea what's happening, I need a huge favor. Please park your cars on the parallel streets, not directly in front of the house. I don't want her to see a crowd of familiar cars as she pulls up. A minute later, I sent the follow-up. And most importantly, please come in through the back gate by the garden, which I'll leave unlocked. Come straight to the backyard. And please, absolute silence upon arrival. No talking, no clapping, no lights. The surprise has to be perfect. Aim for 6 p.m. sharp, so we can all be ready. The replies came back almost immediately. Enthusiastic agreement. Everyone thought they were part of an unforgettable, loving moment. And they were, just for very, very different reasons than they imagined. I spent the last hours fine-tuning every detail, managing the growing anxiety that was a tight knot in my chest. From time to time, I checked my phone, glanced at the clock, and responded to messages, reinforcing the instructions. Absolute silence. Cars far from the house. Entrance through the back gate. The first guests began arriving right at 6, exactly as planned. They walked in on tiptoe, some even taking off their shoes as they stepped onto the patio. Such was their respect for the plan. I greeted them with a quick nod and a finger to my lips, directing them to the backyard. They whispered among themselves, their faces full of curious anticipation. Everyone was there with the best of intentions, ready to be moved by another demonstration of love and recognition. What none of them knew was that this night wouldn't bring applause. It would bring a revelation that would be forever etched in their memories. As the backyard filled discreetly, a silent crowd gathering under the soft glow of the string lights, I reviewed what I would do. I knew Alara believed I was out of town. I knew she expected to find the house empty when she returned. A clear field for her to fall into her own illusion of impunity. Around 7:30, I positioned myself in the hallway. From where I stood, I could partially see the living room. The rest I could observe through the crack in the curtain of the large glass sliding door that separated the backyard from the interior of the house. My phone was already in my hand. Camera app open. Everything ready to record the exact moment. The crowd in the backyard was perfectly silent now, waiting. And then, I heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway, a door shutting, footsteps on the porch, and the distinct sound of a key turning in the lock. The front door opened slowly. They entered laughing. It was a low, intimate sound, the kind of shared laughter between two people who believe they are completely alone, far from any danger, shielded by the darkness. Donovan held Alara by the waist. She lightly pushed him away, still smiling. They exchanged a deep kiss before the door was even fully closed. It wasn't a greeting, it was a continuation of something that had been happening long before they arrived. Alara took off her coat and threw it carelessly onto the couch. Donovan began unbuttoning his shirt with an almost adolescent haste. The two of them were completely absorbed in their own world, living in the moment with the absolute confidence of those who think they are invisible. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but my hand was steady, my breathing was even. I waited. I let the scene unfold. I let them damn themselves completely. As soon as Donovan took another step forward, his shirt now open, and Alara began pulling him by the hand toward the hallway, toward our bedroom. I acted. I firmly slid the glass door open. The sound of the heavy door rolling on its track cut through the room like a scream. The silence that followed was absolute. Total. A vacuum that sucked all the air out of the world. All the guests, standing in the softly lit backyard, stared at the scene in front of them as if the world had frozen for a few eternal seconds. Their faces, just moments before filled with happy anticipation, were now masks of shock and disbelief. Celia, Donovan's wife, was the first to react. A sound tore from her throat. It wasn't just a word. It was a raw, guttural cry of pure agony. Donovan. Oh? She took 2 stumbling steps forward onto the patio and stopped, her hands flying to her mouth, overwhelmed by the sight before her. Donovan turned pale. A sickly, chalky white. He froze, his hands still on his shirt buttons. Alara's eyes widened in sheer, unadulterated panic. She turned, her gaze sweeping from Donovan to the sound, and then she saw them. All of them. Her parents, her sisters, her friends, and Celia. She tried to grab the coat thrown on the couch, a pathetic attempt to cover part of her body, but it was too late. The image was already exposed, burned into the minds of every single person who thought they knew her. The true spectacle behind the facade was laid bare for all to see. Alara tried to run to the bedroom, but she was trapped, paralyzed by Celia's screams, by her mother's horrified gaze, by her father's look of utter disgust, by the blatant, wounded disappointment in her sister's eyes. All of it held her in place. She turned, her mouth opening to try to say something, but no words came out. Shame, hot and red, poured down her face faster than any tears could. I remained motionless. My phone was up, recording everything. My hand was as steady as a surgeon's. There was no speech from me. No accusation. No. How could you? Just the truth, raw, unfiltered, exactly as she had chosen to create it. And now there was no way to erase it. No way to lie her way out of it. Celia was crying now, but it was a cry mixed with a lifetime of repressed anger and frustration. She screamed at Donovan, words I had never imagined could come from her mouth, words that seemed to have been stuck in her throat for years. He tried to explain, stuttering, babbling excuses, but everything he said only made him look smaller, more pathetic. Alara stood frozen in the middle of the living room. Her mother, sobbing, covered her face and turned away, unable to look at her own daughter. Her father remained motionless, his expression as hard as granite, as if trying to maintain the little dignity left in the face of an unthinkable scene. I remained there, standing in the open doorway, my phone still pointed at them, but I was no longer recording. I slowly lowered my arm, and I looked directly at Alara. Our eyes met across the ruined landscape of our living room. She tried to say my name, a broken whisper, but her voice wouldn't come out. We just stared at each other for a few seconds, and in that crushing silence between us, it became brutally clear. There was nothing left to say. She knew what this meant. She knew that everything, ended right there. And the cruelest part, the part that was the very heart of my revenge, was that I didn't yell. I didn't break anything. I didn't beg for explanations. I just showed her. I gave her exactly what she deserved. The living, present, exposed consequence of her actions. Alara finally broke. She let out a choked sob and ran to the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. Julie was still screaming at Donovan. The guests, horrified and embarrassed, began to disperse slowly, melting back into the darkness they had come from. They left without a word, some averting their eyes, others still in shock. Alara's father left without saying goodbye. He just turned and walked away. Her mother, dragged by her 2 other daughters, left in a storm of silent tears. Amidst the trail of muffled voices and tense glances, I walked out to the backyard table. I grabbed a beer from the cooler, opened it calmly, and took the first long sip as if I were closing a chapter. The final page had been turned. A few minutes later, Ilara appeared in the hallway. She was dressed now, her face smeared with ruined makeup. She tried to approach me, but I just raised my hand, a simple gesture to stop her. I didn't want to talk. She insisted, her voice trembling. Elliot, it's not what it looks like. The absurdity of that cliché, in this moment, was almost laughable. It wasn't just. You were always absent, she stammered, searching for a foothold. Always busy with work. I felt so lonely. I stood up, looked directly at her, and my voice was firm, devoid of the love it once held. It was the voice of a judge delivering a final verdict. You had 7 years to tell me that, Ilara. 7 years to talk to me. Instead, you chose to lie and bring another man into our house. The blame for your choice is not mine. She was left speechless. I turned my back on her and went upstairs. I locked our bedroom door and threw myself onto the bed, still fully dressed, staring at the ceiling as if searching in the dark for some good memory that was still worth holding on to. Nothing came. The next day, the house was silent. Ilara had left before dawn. No note, no message, no apology. I spent hours just standing, looking at my own hands. It was strange how the body kept moving forward, even when the soul was in pieces. I got up. I took a shower. I tidied the kitchen, throwing the leftovers of the party into the trash. It felt like I was cleaning not just the house, but the history we had built together. I called a friend at my company and asked for some time off. I needed to take care of my own life for a few days, I said. I disconnected from everything. The pain was there, a deep, resonant ache. But there was also a certain relief, as if by exposing everything, I had ripped out a tumor with my own hands. The surgery was brutal, but it was done. 2 days later, she appeared at the door. Her eyes were swollen, betraying sleepless nights. I remained firm, immobile, looking at her without giving her any space to enter. She asked for just a few minutes. She said she understood the magnitude of the damage she had caused. Her voice trembled as she told me she had requested a transfer at work, that she was moving to another city, far away. She couldn't face the whispers, the looks. She said what happened with Donovan didn't go beyond that night, that it was a mistake she was already regretting even before being exposed. She told me he and Celia had separated. His wife had packed her bags and left without looking back. I listened to all of it with the contained expression of someone who had already heard too much. When she was finished, I looked at the floor for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "Regret only comes when the consequence knocks on your door, Ilara. Choices are made when no one is watching. You are just trying to clean something you dirtied with your own hands." Oh. She tried to ask if there was any chance, in the future, if time would heal. I interrupted her. When trust dies, love dies with it. And that image, the image of you with him, in our home, that won't leave my memory. Because you were the one who brought it there. She stood still, waiting, as if hoping for one more word. But I simply crossed my arms. "You made your choice," I said. "I just showed you what you tried to hide." She nodded silently, turned her back, and left. No drama, no promises, no farewell. In the days that followed, I resumed my routine with a new kind of peace. I rearranged the drawers. I removed old photos. Every object put back in its place was like a sign that that phase had ended. Sometime later, Celia contacted me. The message was short, but sincere. "Thank you for opening my eyes." We met for coffee. We talked, not about the pain, but about what came after. She was starting over, too. There was no romance between us, only a deep, unspoken understanding. The shared knowledge of two people who had survived the same shipwreck. I learned in that fire that the truth, no matter how painful, is the greatest gift you can give yourself. The betrayal pushed me out of a story where I had been deceived, but it freed me to write a new one, a story where every single step was my own. With Celia, there were no games. There was just honesty. And that was enough, because what I wanted most from that point on was exactly that: peace, clarity, and the certainty that I would never again lose myself in someone else's life. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.